Hello Final Fantasy fans, and welcome back to another deck spotlight. Today we're going to be talking about the Wind Lightning Tempo deck featuring Onion Knight and all the other amazing cards that Opus 4 has brought to this deck. Now this is something that's kind of been sitting on the sidelines for a little bit. You know, it was probably a solid tier 2 deck in the Opus 2 and Opus 3 meta, but it had gained so much in Opus 4 that I think it's absolutely worth revisiting. So Red Mage Matt put this first shell together. This is absolutely version 1. So take this list, brew with it, use it as a starting point, test it out at your locals, change what you want to change, but we want to put it out there because this is absolutely something that we're very excited to see how it can evolve in this current meta. And it did win one of our local events. I think we had 12 players, and it went undefeated. So I mean, it's got something to it. I'm not going to say that it's the best deck in the format by any means. I don't think it's way too early for any of that, but it's something that I think should be on your radar. So let's talk about some of the cards it gained. And Ritz Shara is just great, absolutely great. I mean, Ritz gives you that protection against those water decks that say, I want to bounce all of your effects, which yes, they have moved away from that. So the question then becomes, how many Ritz do you run in a deck and how good is the effect going to be? So this is certainly one of the things that you can kind of switch out for your local meta, but Shara is great. The 1-drop 3,000 or 6,000 damage potential with a body to back and EX burst is absolutely everything that this deck wants. And again, that is a major reason for wanting to run Ritz. If you have Onion Knight out on the field and he either is entering or attacking, you can follow up with Shara and potentially deal 9,000 damage in total to a forward. And as you may know, that's going to kill most or if not all creatures that your opponent is going to be playing, or forwards I should say. So Shara is absolutely worth sticking around and seeing if she can do the damage that you want her to do. Beyond that, we have, of course, the Al-Cid package. This is nothing new. A lot of these cards kind of work either with Onion Knight or are, of course, good by themselves with Al-Cid, but it is worth noting that you can do things like Rygdea into Onion Knight, so you can deal 6,000 damage to something. If they have a low-cost forward, that's easy to remove. Dull something else, and then swing for a bunch of damage. Onion Knight, of course, being in this deck for the wind version for his special effect, and also just great to play off Al-Cid. Not a lot needs to be talked about for these 3 cards. However, I do want to mention that Onion Knight itself can be a little difficult. If you have the lightning version on the field, it might stick around a bit longer than you expect. Especially if you're playing Wind Lightning, your opponent's going to just assume at that point that you're playing the wind version as well, and can just take a couple points of damage, making you stuck with your Onion Knight. And it's kind of a give and take at that point. Do we want the damage? Do we want to play the other Wind Lightning? You can get stuck with this in the battlefield, and it does feel bad, but hey, if it's getting in a point of damage, you're probably winning the game anyways. Moving on, we have some of the other cards that really picked up from Opus 4, and then Barbariccia here deserves a special mention. This is still one of the best cards in this deck. You get around Minwu, you get around all the other effects that your opponent could possibly have by reducing its power to 1,000. This turns every single one of your ping effects or other cards that you would have live. And yes, if they have something that reduces the cost, and you have to be careful about which ping or damage or reducing power effect that you're playing, but ultimately anyone who has played this deck, and of course because we're playing the Maria backup as well, having a 4-drop 8k body that effectively counts as a removal spell in the deck is one of the best things about Wind Lightning. And then, of course, we do have the new Onion Knight as well, which has a lot of text, but in short, comes down to whenever you play him to the field or attacks, it deals 3,000 damage. Again, because we're playing all these effects that either have extra ping damage or ping effects, or we want to make sure that we're just trying to finish off one of our opponent's forwards, Onion Knight does absolutely all of that for you. And then, of course, you get to place him on the bottom of your deck and search your deck for a card Onion Knight with Job Sage. So that's the lightning version. So in this case, you have the ability to attack, hopefully get in a point of damage, or if they block, you just do it anyways, but you attack, switch into the lightning Onion Knight, and kill whatever they're going to be playing. Yes, it is unfortunate that you put it at the bottom and then you shuffle it, but it can be, we don't have a tutor for it in this deck, or a way to search it up, I should say, but it is just such a strong card in this deck that it does absolutely everything the Wind Lightning combination wanted to have already, so it absolutely deserves a legendary spot. I know a lot of people are kind of on the fence about this card, or kind of just underrated it because it's like, oh, it can only be played in the Wind Lightning deck, which to a point is true, but I think it leads us to believe it has the legendary spot, and it's powerful for what it wants to be doing. So up next we have Azul, which is just a fun of, if you will. This is a card that Mono Lightning has absolutely abused in recent events and will continue to, I'm sure, but it's just a way to recycle your dragons and behemoths, which we will talk about a little bit later. 5-drop, 8k, which is potentially a 9k in this deck, is certainly nothing to, scoff at either, because it's going to get something back for you. So really it's a 3-drop 9k, which is a perfect spot for Lightning Wind to be in as well. And then Orlandeau. I mean, this card, you play this card once and you realize how strong it is. In this deck, it is going to be a 3 of because of all the ping effects you have, or ways to abuse his Shadow Blade. And this is, again, one of the strongest cards in the deck for how versatile it is ultimately, with either the power reduction or just breaking a damage forward. So Orlandeau absolutely is earning his spots. And then we're going into monsters. With Opus 4 has really brought us an interesting gambit of cards to play with and start to think about kind of what our summon lineup is. And if we look at this here, we can see that we're going to be very low on our summon count because we are playing so many monsters. With this, we have the 1-drop Cactuar. As we mentioned with Barbariccia, you can reduce something to 1,000. So you can play her on 4, for 4, tab Cactuar for free, and just kill whatever you want of theirs. That alone is very, very strong, but it's not to be missed that the 3-cost effect as well. And you may look at this and realize that yes, late game it might be a bit rough to use if you're at 5 points of damage already. You don't want to go to that 6, but having the option to deal 10k damage and remove any forward in this game, unless they have something like Minerva Maria, of course, is where you want to be, because you can just play this early. If something gives you a lot of trouble, you can just ping it off and take a point of damage. Dragoon, kind of in the same way, except it doesn't have that much of a drawback. You have to pay 2 to get onto the field, and then pay 2 more to put in the break zone, and choose a 4 to cost 4 or less and break it. This is great because it can sit out on the field. It can just be a constant threat for your opponent. They're going to second guess what they want to play. Maybe it throws them off curve, and it can really help you deal with some problematic forwards. And again, we can bring it back off Azul. And then, of course, probably, it's really between Dragon and Behemoth, which one we want to be bringing back, depending on the matchup, depending on the board state, what have you. But Behemoth is great as well. The short of that ability says it's going to block and kill whatever blocks it. Of course, things like Minwu, but what that might be a problem. But it's going to become a 9k forward, so chances are that's going to be strong enough itself. Now, yes, the biggest weakness to all 3 of these cards is Dark Emperor, and there's a lot of people now, more than ever, who are jamming Dark Emperors in their deck just to counter monsters. And I think the biggest question about Opus 4 will ultimately be, how much do you rely on monsters? How many summons are we going to be playing? How many decks are playing Dark Emperor? Just playing this kind of Dark Emperor metagame against how many monsters you play versus summons versus the Dark card itself. And with that, we get to our summons, which, if you'll notice, we only have a singleton Odin for Emperor. And of course, there's other 4-drops that we want to be hitting, but it's worth noting because of how many monsters we're playing, we just need something to be able to kill them in case our Behemoth and Dragons get shut off. Beyond that, we have Cyclops as well, which, as we have mentioned, when you have things like Onion Knight, who can ping something for 3,000. We have Barbariccia, who can reduce something to 1,000 power. We have many effects that can get value out of Cyclops for us, or if we really need to, we can push for damage with it, so we can have it build up a board state, which is what you're going to do very often and very easily with Wind Lightning. Play Cyclops and make it a series of unfortunate blocks for your opponent, so you can just swing through for damage. Moving on, we have our Lightning backups. You'll see that we are playing ones that are very common to Mono Lightning. We have 1-cost Summoner, which just helps out your curve. Very efficient in this deck, is where you want to be. Lightning Wind is all about efficiencies and trading up with your opponents where the value is in your favor. 2-drop Black Mage helps us do that when we have things like Archer. We have Onion Knight. There's a lot of ways to ping our opponent's stuff and be able to deal with these problematic forwards. So Black Mage is earning his room is here as well. Red Mage, again, no surprise, this is just a staple for what seems like forever at this point in Lightning-based decks. Being able to give something haste out of nowhere is absolutely where you want to be. And then we do play 2 of the Lulu, because your Al-Cid and Onion Knight and Rygdea cards and some of the lower cost ones can be a little underwhelming, so it does help boost them up power wise. And then beyond that, we do play Maria as well, so all our lightning forwards gain plus 2,000 power, which is a ton in this deck, and can turn your Al-Cid Onion Knight cards into real threats. So we are very much welcoming the power backups for what our cards want to be doing. Beyond that, of course, we are playing 3 of the 2-drop Archer from Opus 1 because we need to deal with Minwu and we need to deal with plus 1,000 power backups. Right now, this hits quite a number of things. And if you were playing a wind deck and not playing at least 2 of these, I would absolutely urge you to put these into your deck immediately. The relevancy of Archer has only increased with Opus 4. And then we have the 2-drop version for the most recent set, Opus 4. Comes in, enters the field, deal 1,000 damage to all the forwards opponent controls. So you can see this theme. We have Onion Knight, we have Barbariccia, we have Black Mage, we have, attacking before we play anything. Your opponent thinks that they're going to live by 1,000 damage, then you play this and remove it, get your, lightning out Onion Knight off the field. It does quite a bit of work for you. And even more so, that second effect has been quite strong early on in testing, dealing 2,000 damage to all forwards. So again, we can play this deck where if we don't see our power backups early, we can just attack out with our cards and threaten Archer, where they might be playing these 5 and 6 drops they may not necessarily want to lose, and then we're getting in early points of damage. That is a perfectly fine place to be. And with that, we have the Wind Lightning Tempo Onion Knight base deck. We really hope you guys will try this out at your locals, maybe this weekend or this week if you have the opportunity to, and let us know kind of what your flex cards are for this deck. I will say this is a deck that probably has 40 solid cards that are in it, and then up to 10 that are just constantly in flux depending on your either local meta, personal preferences, whatever it might be. But I think as the meta develops, we will see more of this element combination that we've seen previously, and I absolutely look forward to seeing where this deck is going in the near future. So if you guys like this video, make sure to drop us a like down below, comment of course what your variant of this deck is going to be, and subscribe for future Final Fantasy trading card game content. So on behalf of myself and the rest of Six Sages Gaming, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next Final Fantasy deck spotlight video. Have a good one. This video made possible thanks to our Patreon supporters. Thank you to our honorary sages.